A couple of weeks ago, I asked you guys to tell me your 5-star reads so that I could write down your recommendations and add them to a TBR jar. I thought in this video we would do a deeper dive into the 30 books that made it into the TBR jar. I was so blown away. There were over 480 responses. And if I wrote down all 480, some of them were duplicates, but if I wrote them all down, I would be reading out of this jar for the next 3 years. So let's talk about which 30 made the cut and why I picked the ones that I did. My plans with this jar is, you know, those moments when you can't decide what to read next. You've maybe just finished a series or you've just finished a book you really loved. Sometimes I find myself a bit stuck and I spend hours staring at my bookshelves waiting for it to tell me what to read next. And I'm not going to have to do that anymore because you guys and your recommendations are going to save the day. So that's how I'm going to be using these, and I might try and pull a couple to fit into my monthly TBR lists as well. Without further ado, because there's a lot of books to go through, let's dive into here. I'm realising as I unfold these, I'm going to have to fold every single one of them back up. What a book to start off with. This one is Ensnared. Now, the person who wrote this actually gifted me a copy of Ensnared last Christmas. Ensnared, if you didn't know, it's the Tiffany Roberts one, is the Spider's Mate or the Spider's Bride series. It is monster romance with a Spider-Man. Not the Spider-Man, just a Spider-Man. To be fair, the reason I wrote this down is A, I love monster romance and it's really great to have something lighter in here to look forward to. But B, this has been on my list for so many years and actually I had forgotten about it until this person bought me a copy last Christmas. And it sat there on my shelf for me to read, so this is a fantastic reminder. Into the jar it goes. I'm going to have to be careful not to lose any of these. Up next we have The Lamb. Who is this by? Up next, we have The Lamb by Lucy Rose, I believe. This one is a slightly different genre for me. I'm mainly a large fantasy romance reader or contemporary romance reader. Up next, we have The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This one is a YA fantasy romance, and I've heard that this one is absolutely addictive. This is another book that I've had on my shelf since it released, in fact before it released, that I never got around to reading. I do enjoy YA fae-based fantasy romance like These Hollow Vows, and I really do think I'm going to enjoy The Rose Bargain, particularly when I'm looking for like an easy, cheesy fantasy romance read. So that's why this one has made it into the TBR jar. Up next, we have In the Veins of Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. I'm not going to lie, if this one wasn't in here, I would be picking this up to read soon anyway. I need to figure out if this one is a standalone or not, but I'm seeing such rave reviews for this fantasy romance. This is Sirens or Mermaids, I believe. And in particular, I've seen a lot of accounts recently reading this. It has been out for a couple of months already. But there's a lot of booktalkers and bookstagrammers that I love following that have rated this really highly, and my reviews usually align closely with theirs, so I'm excited to see what all the hype is about. I know exactly who wrote this one. In fact, a few people said this one, but I know specifically whose suggestion I wrote down. This is The Kindred's Curse Saga by Penn Cole. That is actually 3 books. This is not 1 book, this is 3 books that are currently out. So the first one being Spark of the Everflame. This is another series that I've been meaning to read for such a long time. In fact, I have various copies of this book, multiple special editions, and I have met the author twice. I am so determined to read this one that I've actually put it on my 10 before the end list. But if for whatever reason I don't manage to make it round to that before the end of the year, then at least it's in my TBR jar to give me another reminder, yet another reminder to pick it up. A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwen, I feel like. This author has another series that I have all 3 books of. That is the Ledge series. Why have I not read that? I don't know. I've just never got round to it, but I do have all of the glorious hardbacks of that one. But I actually think that this one is a little bit more up my alley. I've never read anything by this author, and I am really interested in doing so. I'm hoping this is going to be the push I need. I'm hoping this one pops up earlier in the TBR jar. And that one's another fantasy romance title. You'll see there's a bit of a theme going on here. Another one that got quite a lot of recommendations is For Whom the Bell Tolls. I actually also got a couple of recommendations specifically saying that the audiobook was a 5-star listen, so I have downloaded the audiobook as well in preparation, and I think that's how I'm going to read this one. I know very little about this. All I've seen is people being very not casual about this, and it kind of came out of the blue for me. I knew nothing about this book until it was released. Nonetheless, I have the audiobook ready and raring to go. Up next, we have This Monster of Mine. This is another book that I saw a lot of positive things about when it first released, which I think was earlier this year. But actually what I'm seeing this in a lot at the moment, and I think this is the reason why I picked this one out of so many recommendations, is I'm seeing a lot of people say that this is one of their top 5 or top 10 books of this year. And it's kind of made me sit up and listen and go, oh damn, Maybe I should have read you sooner. Up next is The Jasad Heir. Again, another book I feel like the people that love it are not very casual about their love for it. I have heard so many positive things about this one, and I don't actually have a copy of this. I think I might have it in an ebook format, but I'll deal with that when I pull this one out of the jar. This one is YA fantasy, I believe. I've actually put a few more YAs in here than I have been reading recently because I've mainly been leaning towards adult romantasy. And I think this one is based on Egyptian lore and mythology, which I haven't really read a lot of fantasy based around that specific type of lore. Bit of a rogue one. This is Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This is a dark rom-com that has been on my list for quite some time. I was actually initially scared of reading this, which is why I don't think I picked it up when the initial hype was around the series. Some of the trigger warnings in this just seemed a little odd to me. If you've read that list, you'll know why. But I did recently read Lights Out by Nevessa Allen, which is another dark romantic comedy, and I found that one hilarious, and a lot of people are telling me if I enjoyed that one, I'll enjoy this one, and then it came up as a 5-star recommendation, so into the jar it had to go. Up next is also another book that I have, and I've met the author multiple times, and I have various special editions of this book, so I should have just read it by now, and that is Till Death by Miranda Lynn. Very specifically, somebody recommended the audiobook. I don't know whether I am going to listen to the audiobook. Maybe I'll listen to a sample. Maybe I just have to trust you guys. I only say that because I have the standard edition and then I think 2 special editions of this book. So it makes sense to just read those, but maybe if I'm in a listening mood and this comes out of the jar, I will give it a listen on the audiobook. This one is a newer release and one that was already on my radar, but I didn't quite realise how highly people had rated this. This is The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovolino. This is romantasy, I believe, with lady knights and their mages. And I recently got a gorgeous edition of this, I think in a Luma crate, so this was part your guys' recommendation and how feral you are for it, and part the character art in that edition, like they came hand in hand. I'm really happy this one got mentioned though, because I do feel like it's one of those books I might forget about until I finally get to it. So having it in the jar is going to help me get to it sooner. Up next we have Voidwalker. This is one I was really unsure about. My friend Laura recently read and really enjoyed this, and I don't know why I've not just trusted my friend Laura's recommendation. But it took for one of you guys to tell me it was one of your 5-star reads for me to put this on the list. Again, I do have a really beautiful special edition of this, which means that I should be pretty excited to read it anyway. I think I don't know too much about it and I just can't quite tell from the book like what genre it sits within. Maybe it's a bit of a genre bending one, which is absolutely fine. And the guy has a tail, so that's probably the main reason it ended up in the jar, if we're completely honest with ourselves. Then we have Road of Bones. This is one that's kind of been on my periphery for quite some time. I believe this is by the author Demi Winters. Again, I've seen a couple of accounts that usually we like the same things, rate this really highly. I don't know, there's just something about it that hasn't been right at the top of my TBR before. I don't actually have copies of these either. I think I have an ebook of book 1, maybe book 2. In fact, I'm almost certain I have an ebook of book 1. This is where I need to do some kind of Kindle audit. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is about this one that's just not made it to my list previously, even though I've seen lots of hype about it. Too many books to read and not enough time, probably. I feel like this jar is never ending. It feels like so many more books than 30. Up next is a slightly older series and one that I wasn't expecting to see in the recommendation box, and that is Poison Study by Maria Snyder. I should have read this already, not only because I feel like it's become a bit of a cult classic, but also because I own all 6 Fairy Loot editions of this series and it does look fantastic. So thank you to Beth for putting this in there. I feel like that series is just going to be an absolute void that I'm going to fall into and become obsessed with. Next up we have The Ordeals by Rachel Greenlaw. I actually forgot this was in here and I have recently, and by recently I mean within the past week, just got a copy. I have never read anything by the author. I do generally enjoy Dark Academia titles and I've been reading quite a few YA Dark Academias this year that I have really enjoyed. And this one I think is based around a magic academy as well, which is another one. Like, I like it when Dark Academia has that real kind of magic school vibe to it. But it's newly released and I have a hardback copy ready to go. Oh, this is another book I really should have read already. This is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. I have really enjoyed a lot of books by Scarlett St. Clair. I've read almost all of her backlog. I have a proof copy of this book and it is one I did get time to read before it released. I don't know if it's because it's an urban fantasy. Generally, I haven't read a lot of urban fantasies. I did when I was younger, like talking about the Shadowhunters era, but I just feel like it's not that predominant at the moment. Although I'm definitely seeing things shift, I do think there are more urban fantasy romances being released. And I have seen some sizzling, shall we say, character art of this book. So that's why it made it into the jar. Another one from an author I've never read anything from before, but have been interested in over the years, and that is Silver Cloak by Laura Stevens. I think the only reason I haven't read a Laura Stevens book before is just because there's quite a few different ones. A lot of them are standalones and kind of within different subgenres of fantasy. And I guess I just haven't known where to start. This is another one I did get a proof copy of. I was very kindly sent one and just didn't get around to reading. But I don't have any special editions or like physical copies other than the proof copy of this, so I might try and get my hands on the gorgeous Fairy edition if I do read this. Well, when I read this, when it gets pulled out of the jar, when fate decides and you guys decide that I will read Silver Cloak by Laura Stevens. Up next, I have The Ascended by Greenwich and Lennox. I have spelt this wrong. Actually, I don't know if you can see them behind me. I've recently just bought Riftborn, Duskbound and The Ascended in the gorgeous hardbacks. So this says The Ascended because this is the one that was recommended to me, but I have seen people recommend that you read Riftborn and Duskbound first. So if I pull this, I'm actually going to get started with Riftborn. But that book is brand new out, so it's great to see that it's getting so much love already. Then we have Blood and Betrayals by Alexis Rune and Jeanette Rose. Again, one that I have a gorgeous special edition of. A couple of my friends absolutely love this. Laura and Emma, two of my friends in particular, are a big fan of this book. It is just so long, and I think that's why I've put it off. So if I pull it out of here, at least it's going to force me to take on those 1,000 pages. Up next is a book I haven't read, but from an author that I love, and that is Warrior Princess Assassin by Bridget Kemmerer. I feel like I'm using the same excuses at this point. This is not a video of me excusing why I haven't read these books, but I do have a beautiful Fairy Loot special edition of this, and I really should have read it. I was kind of saving it for the winter because the book looks a bit wintry. I don't know if it is or not. I will read it. It is one of my priority ones. Even if I don't pull it out of this jar, I think I'll read that one at some point anyway. Up next, and this is actually a book I am putting on my 10 before the end. I've tried not to overlap them too much, but this is one I am really keen to read, and this is The Wolf King. This was originally independently published. It's recently been picked up by Wayward. I have a proof copy staring at me out of the corner of my eye. But I think this book has just come out or is just coming out in the next week or two. Although it is available to read on Kindle Unlimited if anyone doesn't have a physical copy. It just seems right up my alley. I have really been enjoying the books that Wayward have picked up. So I'm definitely going to be diving into that one. Then I have What Blooms from Death by S.M. Gaither. I'm glad you guys recommended this because again, I have purchased a special edition of this book without knowing anything about it. I have read and enjoyed some other bits from S.M. Gaither, which is one of the other reasons that it's on here. And also the book just looks fantastic. I've seen bits and bobs of it over the internet and I do want to read it. I think we're down to our last couple maybe. This book, I very briefly researched for the purposes of putting it in my TBR. I also researched probably 30 or 40 other books in the purposes of putting them in this TBR. This is Shardless. I haven't wrote down an author name, but I will recognise the cover when I see it. I also have a friend in the US who has read this recently as an ARC and absolutely loved it. And I didn't think too much of it at the time, but then seeing how many people have loved this, into the TBR jar it goes. My friend Laura, if she's watching this video, will be cackling because she's been asking me to read these books for about 2 years on and off, and I do have some signed copies of these. This is Daughter of the Drowned Empire by Frankie Diane Malice. This suggestion did not come from my friend Laura, but I did let her know on a video call that somebody had asked me to put it in there and she told me that I had to. So this one was coercion. I can't feel very many left in the jar. Next up is another one a friend's been trying to get me to read for ages, but this recommendation didn't come from that friend. This is A Rivalry of Hearts by Tissonia Odette. This does sit within the genre of cozy fantasy romance that I like to read, but it is a light academia and feels maybe a little bit more whimsical than I'm used to. However, I remember watching my friend Rosie read this as an ARC a couple of years ago now, and she had such a visceral reaction to some of the romance in this. So I'm glad it's back on my radar. There are 4 left, so now feels like the perfect time for you to go into the comments and let me know whether I've read out the book that you were hoping to hear made it into this jar yet. This one is a little left field. This is Project Hail Mary. This one is a sci-fi, and again, one that my friend Laura and her wife actually both really have loved. But again, the recommendation didn't come from either Laura or her wife. I want to say like 7 of you told me to read this one. It's not within my usual genre. However, I feel like I have to read it now. And I've also heard that the audiobook on that one as well is fantastic. Third from the end, we have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. Again, one I was expecting to show up. I've seen lots of positive things about this, and it is a book I have 5 copies of, 4 special editions and the proof. In my defense on this one, the proof showed up after the book released. I'm using that as my excuse to finally read my first R of Kwang book, and it will be Catabasis. A bit more spicy, dark, or taboo romance. This is Dear Reader by Tate James. I have recently just bought all the books that are out in this series. I have read and loved a lot of books by Tate James. Why have I not read this one, you ask? I don't know. I feel like they've come out so quick. I remember book 1 coming out and being like, oh, I'll add that to my TBR. I'm so excited to read that. And then now there's 3 books out. It's in the jar. It's going to get read. And the last one, let's hope it's a good one. The last one is A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain. This is an indie series currently, I believe. The first 3 books are out and book 4 comes out really soon. You guys must have read my mind because I actually have these books behind me. I bought them, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago. It was just before book 3 came out. And then I ordered book 3 when it released. I was intending to read these this year, and I think just because there's been so many new releases in the last couple of months, I just haven't got round to them. But this is an indie series. It seems to have sprung out of nowhere. I saw some incredible reviews of book 1 that put it on my radar. And then I've had a couple of people in my book club read it and tell me it's great. I've had a friend in real life read this and tell me it's great. So this recommendation has come from lots of places, and I'm glad that it has ended up in the jar. I've got to get them all back in. Did I mention any of your 5-star reads? Or how many of these books have you read, and would you agree that they are 5-star material? Also, let me know down in the comments if there is a book that you think I should have in this jar that didn't get mentioned today. I'm planning to film some monthly TBR videos, which is a newer style of video for me. Usually I don't work off a TBR, I'm just a big mood reader, but I feel like I need a bit more structure. So check back in on those videos to see which of these I'm pulling each month. Make sure if you aren't already, you have subscribed, liked, and left me those comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.